Hey everyone, this is Lendon back for another lit Actionvfx tutorial, like literally, okay? I've been gone for a while, so I'll try to make this tutorial a real treat for you. Let's have a look at what we'll be creating before you get bored and leave me. Wow, that was awesome. I hope you're now on fire, like I'm on fire right now. So we'll be covering some pretty cool stuff in this tutorial. First, we'll learn how to create this flamey fire text, which is pretty awesome, like fire text. And then we'll learn how to create this really nice reflection, this environment setup. And if that's not cool enough, if that's not enough, we'll also be learning how to make this really cool flamey fire transition, which I think is pretty pretty. By the way, I'm going to show you guys something. Look at this, okay? Just look at it for 2 seconds. Towards the end of this tutorial, we're going to be having so much fun making this fire look luscious and juicy, alright? I'm going through withdrawals right now. We need some satisfying color and glow in our life. Life cannot be this absent of pleasure. I'm just saying, let's treat ourselves like decent human beings. Okay, so you can see here off the bat, we already have some shiny, glossy text. This stuff is pretty awesome. We actually do not have time to cover this. It's a pretty lengthy process, pretty complicated, so we're going to get right into the fire compositing. So here we have an Actionvfx small ground fire element. We're just going to drag it right above the text. And what I like to do with stock footage compositing is just get that anchor point right from the start. So we'll have better controls over the rotation and scale without changing the base position. Now let me just get the size right. So I'm thinking somewhere around 70 looks good. And then I'll put this behind the text layer. So this is going to be kind of burning from behind. Alright, that looks good. We can control the rotation just like this. Maybe make it burn more to the side. So the next thing we can think about is the speed, the playback speed of these flames. And let's just take a little preview here. It look a little bit too rapid for me. I'm going to slow this down. That's the nice thing about these small fire ground elements is that they're filmed at a high frame rate, 59.94 frames per second. So we can slow this down without losing any frames. So we're going to go over here to time stretch, and we're going to choose the stretch factor to be 150%. So that's going to slow it down. And we can also choose current frame for the hold in place. It's basically like the anchor point. So let's hit OK. It's going to stretch from that point. Keeps things in control better. So let's go ahead and take a preview of that, see how that looks. Much better. I like the slower flames. And again, we did not lose any frames because of the fast frame rate that this footage was filmed in. Alright, this looks great, but there's a problem here. Look at this. What are we going to do? Well, basically, we need to mask this part out. So, what we're going to do is we're going to use a track mat to mask these elements out. We're not just going to apply a mask directly to the footage. And there's several advantages to this, and I'll talk about that as I go on, so I won't just waste your time here. I'm just going to do it as I do these processes to save your time. So what we're going to do, let's create a new solid, and let's call this A mat, because this is the mat for the A letter. So let's hit OK. We'll go to this small fire ground element. We'll call this A as well, so we can just keep it organized. And let's go to the track mat and hit alpha mat. So this A layer is only going to exist where the layer above itself is visible. So if we mask out this A mat layer somewhere, so we just go like this. Boom, the A layer only exists where this mat exists. So we want to change this to subtract, and we can see here that we've masked out the fire from this section of the comp. So here's the primary advantage of using track mats, is that we could transform, geometrically change, add effects, whatever, to the footage without affecting the mat, and that's the biggest thing. We can easily change the position without affecting the mat, add effects, whatever. So, but the other advantage, and this is something to think about, is that we can apply transformations, geometric changes, apply effects, whatever, to this mat without affecting the footage. So basically we can just affect these two layers individually. So what we're doing here is facilitating creativity or flexibility, and sometimes doing that requires a little bit of extra work, so it's important not to be lazy in that way. And dude, I'm just gonna say, not being lazy is seriously a huge part in being successful in visual effects or anything else really. And not to mention, sometimes being lazy actually causes us to end up doing more work in the long run. Because when we're lazy, we want to do the easy tasks sooner, which sometimes forces us to do unnecessary hard tasks later. So I like this quote, do what's hard and your life will be easy. Do what's easy and your life will be hard. So yeah, so back to what I was saying, it's just about not being lazy and creating those setups and systems that facilitate maximum creativity. So the next thing we're going to do is add a Liquify effect to this fire layer. And what this will do is allow us to kind of subtly change the shape of this fire effect to be more customized to our scene. So what we can do here is grab this tool, turn up the brush size, and I just kind of change the shape a little bit like this, because we want this edge to more align with the slant of this A letter here, so we can move it to the side, and we just want it to kind of brush the edges as though it's burning off the edge of this A letter, something like that. We can even move this part inward more. So Liquify is actually a really nifty tool for a lot of situations. You can kind of control the shape of your stock footage. And again, we couldn't do this if we didn't have the track matte, because the Liquify would be affecting our mask if the mask was applied to the fire layer directly. So what I'm going to do before I move to this next letter, which is the V, I'm going to pre-compose this fire layer. I'm going to leave all attributes. And what this does is when we duplicate this layer here, Control D, we'll be able to go in here, make changes to the fire in this composition, and it'll update automatically to all of the fire layers here in the parent composition. I can show you what I mean real quick. If I just move this to the side here, go inside here, and then make an adjustment, you can see it updates to every instance of the fire in this parent composition, because this is a duplicate of the same composition. So that should definitely facilitate some creativity. Alright, so let's go ahead and start working on the fire for the V letter. So let's call this V matte. Stay organized, man. I'm learning. It's worth it to be organized. Just name everything. Don't be lazy. Do the job right with the details. I mean, it also depends on the size of the project you're working on. Sometimes I'll start working on small projects and it turned into something real big, and I wasn't organized. I thought it was going to be small, but it turned out big. And for me, I think the better option is just to make it a habit to be organized. So I don't really have to think about it. It just automatically happens. That's what I love about habits. Things happen automatically. You can train yourself to do things automatically without even thinking about it. That's rather amazing. So we just kind of changed the timing here to randomize the state of the flame. And let's go ahead and make the mask here. So we can probably just move this mask if we want to, like that. If it's okay if it comes off this side, because it's kind of burning from left to right, so that's okay. Here we can control the rotation size of this flame. Everything, because of this track matte, that we have complete control, complete dominance over this situation. I can't take it. Too much pleasure. Control and dominance, by the way. That's good advice for your relationships in your life, right? Control, dominance. No, bad advice. Don't do it. Here, we're in After Effects. We get to have as much control as we want, but be careful in relationships. That's why you see all these other people. They're out dating. They're out having dates, hanging out with girls. Let's see what happens when they try to control people. Break up. What happens when we're here in After Effects and can try to control the situation? We get juicy visual effects and the money, right? So who's the real winners? And what am I talking about? So let's just go ahead and do one more letter. I'm not going to make you do the last one, even though we're almost done. So let's just try and go through this process again to make sure we've covered everything. So we'll call this F. Call this F matte, and move it over here. And let's just again change the timing so it randomizes the state of the fire. We can move this mask. Now remember, we have this Liquify effect here, so if we ever need to do anything to change the shape, which we probably don't for this particular instance, we'll just delete the Liquify here. There we go. We'll do something like that. I'm going to rotate this a little bit. Yeah, I'm not going to talking about how I have control again, but yeah, control. Do whatever I want to with this track matte. Rotate, move, scale. My matte is intact. I refuse to ever get over how awesome that is. All right. So I'm going to try something with the Liquify actually. Let's just add Liquify to the X fire. We're going to change the size of this tool a little bit. So I'm going to just bring it down here so it just kind of looks like it's burning off the edge like that. Push this up a little bit. Push this back. There we go. No track matte even needed. Wow, something beat the track matte. Liquify. So this Liquify definitely did come in handy. So I think that's a pretty cool technique. So guys, we're ready to move to the next step, which we're going to go over the more complicated compositing techniques, which is compositing the fire that kind of consumes the letters and goes in front of the letters. And this is going to be an interesting challenge to somehow make it come from behind the letters and emerge in front of the letters. This is going to be a challenge. I hope you are interested in understanding some of the ways that we're going to do this. Time to turn on the curiosity part of our brain, which I'll be honest guys, one of my favorite parts about life is this feeling of curiosity in my brain. I'm just going to say that life would not be the same without wonder and curiosity, and I feel like curiosity is such a huge factor in growth in life. Okay, so the first part we're going to work on is making a flame kind of come out of the hole of this A letter here. So let's go to our stock footage, and we're going to drag in this little small ground fire element here. Let's drag it in. We're going to put it above the text because we want this fire to actually be in front of the text at certain areas. So I'll position the anchor point with this pan behind tool. If you didn't know about the pan behind tool and everything else you knew about, like this tutorial was a complete waste of time except the pan behind tool, it would be completely worth your time. Like all 30 minutes would be completely worth it just because of this pan behind tool, right? We can freaking move the anchor point without changing the position of our footage. That's amazing. And there's actually more uses to the pan behind tool, but we're not going to get into that. So let's go ahead and pre-compose this layer. Let's do the same thing. Leave all attributes. We'll call this A front. And we'll just change the scale a little bit like this. And we probably don't need to slow it down because of how we scaled it down. That's going to change the speed of the motion because since it's smaller, it's going to move slower. But we don't want to scale it down too small because we want the texture of these flames to be kind of the same size. So we don't want these flames to look too small. So guys, how are we going to do this? How are we going to composite this kind of in the hole, so I'm going to introduce to you this really interesting technique I discovered while working on this project, and I really like it. I'll definitely be using it in future projects. Here's what we're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to skip forward in time a little bit just so you guys can see the final result of this technique so that you won't be lost when I start explaining it from scratch. So basically what we have here is a main mat that's matting out the flame, right? And we're doing that through a track mat. But then we have other individual layers that are matting out the main mat, which then mats out the flame because of the track mat, all right? So we have other layers matting out the main mat, which then mats out the flame layer. And the advantage here is that we have complete control over each matting layer. Like we can apply effects to these mats individually. So let me go ahead and explain this technique from scratch. But I just want to do this explanation so you guys wouldn't be lost about what the technique's about. Alright, so what we're going to do is make a new solid. We'll call this A-hole mat. A-hole. Crap. No, I didn't mean to do that, whatever. I hope no one's offended, right? No one's offended by a hole. Like it's the hole in the A, right? We're not just, okay. And then what we're going to do is make this A, we'll choose alpha mat. Alright, so this A front fire layer only exists where this A hole mat is. And what we're gonna do, so here's the trick, guys. What we're gonna do is start making other mats. We're gonna call this A1. And then we're gonna make a shape. We're gonna make a shape in this A1 solid, right? So we're gonna go like this, there we go. Let's try like that. Alright, so you can see we got this A1 mat here. And what we're going to do is apply the A1 mat to this A hole mat. And that'll translate to the fire layer through the track mat. Alright, hopefully this is making sense. So we're going to apply A1 to the main mat with a set mat effect. So we'll apply set mat to the main mat layer. And for the mat layer, we're going to choose A1. So nothing happened so far, but what we need to do is we have an option here. This is another cool bit of software information. When we're taking matte layers, we actually have the option in After Effects now to process effects and masks from the matte layer. And so we want to choose that because we want it to process that mask on the A1 layer. All right. Before we would have to pre-compose and then use the set matte effect. That would be too complicated and probably not worth it. But in the new version of After Effects, we're able to process effects and masks directly from the set matte effect. That's pretty awesome. And then it's important that we just invert this matte because when we apply other set matte effects, we won't be able to add more visibility. So we've got to subtract rather than add. We can keep subtracting more areas, but we can't add information back. There we go. So let's go ahead and turn this off, see how it looks. We can see we've matted out this flame layer from the A1 mat. So guys, that's the setup, and this definitely gives us so much matting control and opens up so many possibilities, and we can make as many of these matting layers as we want to. So let's create a new solid. We'll call this A2. Keep this really organized because it can be kind of complex with a lot of layers involved, and we can also even color these layers. So like maybe choose like yellow or something here. I'm going to draw a shape in this A2 layer, so let's just go with something like this. And then we got to apply it to the main matte layer through a set matte effect. So let's just duplicate this, choose A2, voila. So now you're about to see the real advantages of this method because we're going to apply effects to this A2 matte without applying them to A1 or anything else. We just have so much control over the system. So I can add a little bit of feather here starting off. and turn up the mask expansion. And what we're going to do is apply Turbulent Displace to this A2 map. Alright, just like that. Let's turn down the size to something like 20. Turn up the complexity here, maybe about 3. And then you can see here we have some Turbulent Displace being applied to this mat. So we can something like that. And let's animate this offset turbulence. We're going to do this with an expression guide. We're learning so much new information. All these techniques, expressions. Woo! You didn't come here to waste your time, right? You came here to learn some hardcore techniques. So what we're going to do is hold alternate, click the stopwatch here, and we're going to type in an expression. There are 2 parameters in this offset turbulence, so we've got to do an array. So we'll do the square brackets here, put a comma. For the left parameter, we're going to do time times. This is the x value, so we'll do time times 100. And for the y value, we'll do time times negative 200, because negative is upward. The second parameter is the y axis. So this turbulent offset should be animating upward. Let's go ahead and check out a preview. I should have done a preview a while back, so you guys wouldn't be getting bored. It's important for us to receive the fruits of our labor. So guys, look at that. That is pretty amazing how we were able to mask out part of this fire layer so inconspicuously. Like, you can't even see a mask there because of this matte technique of being able to apply Turbulent Displace to this matte layer individually without it affecting, this matte here. That, guys, that is pretty amazing. Tell you right now, if I do say so myself. Alright, so another technique, what we can do is apply, use the mask feather tool. So we can go over here, click and hold, and go to the mask feather tool. Obviously, G is a shortcut. So let's hit M, click on the mask here, and we're just going to hit plus, like that. And just click it here again, and just drag this out. So we're going to add some feather here, just in case we have any hard edges. We don't want any problems with hard edges. And again, we can apply another mask up here if this fade is too obvious. We can just click the A2 layer here, grab the pen tool, and just kind of draw another shape right here. Because A2 is the matte with the Turbulent Displace texture applied to it. And I'll add a little bit of feather here. Hey, after doing all those adjustments, we can go back to the original layer here and just move it around to our liking. That's how much control we have in the system we set up. It just opens up so much more potential and fast editing and creative possibility. Imagine if we would just applied a mask to this fire layer and it just would have, you could obviously see the fades and it looks so ugly. Gosh, I can't help it, guys. I'm in such a good mood right now because of how good this is turning out. And we need to move on to the next letter here, but one last thing I want to do is actually just kind of, since actually the letter extrudes out, the fire layer doesn't need to be completely covering that extruded part of the text. So what we're going to do is for this A2, the matte with the texture on it, we're going to, something like this, a matte kind of like this, and just feather it out a little bit so it's kind of like, so that we have some kind of depth in there, so it's kind of skimming along the extruded part of the text. Look at that, guy. Oh, look at that. Would you look at it? Gosh, that's so good. There we go, guys. This turned out really good for the tutorial. So let's go ahead and make the front fire for this V layer. And so this is kind of another principle for creative work ethic, is set up your system where you can duplicate your work and not have to recreate a slight variation of the same effect every time from scratch. Make your work where you can duplicate it so you can save time and not have to redo work over and over again. So that's something to think about. Make your work where you can duplicate it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to duplicate all our work here. So hit Control D and go ahead and rename this. We'll call this V front. We'll call this V front matte. Call this V1. Call this V2. Let's go ahead and change our set matte. Let's apply this to V1, apply this one to V2. We're going to turn them off for now because there's no matte. We deleted the mask on our matte layers. We'll turn it off so our fire will be visible. And for this one, I actually want this original small fire ground layer. So this is a cool technique right here. Watch this software trick real closely. What we'll do is right click on this small fire composition, this pre-composed composition. So we'll hit Reveal Layer Source and Project. This is cool. It's going to find the layer in our project. And what we can do is click on this layer here. And what we'll do is hold alternate and we can replace this composition with the other small fire composition. So let go. Boom, we replace it. That is a super useful technique if you didn't know about those software tricks. And let's just move this. We're going to rotate a little bit more so it kind of comes over the edge of this V here. We can go ahead and add mask to these matte layers. Turn on the set matte 1 like that. Cool. And then for the V2, what we can do is just, For the V2, we'll create a few masks here, so let's just do one like right here. You turn on the set matte and the main matte layer. Add a little bit of feather. Alright, so there we go. We have the front fire for this V letter, and we're just going to go through and do this for the F and the X. There's a lot of information we covered there, so you guys might have to watch through it again to really understand kind of the purpose and details of that knowledge we covered. So I'm going to go ahead and do this same process for the F and the X. There we go, we have the F front fire finished. Add so much 3D geometry and depth and integration to the composite. And while we're at it, guys, I want to show you guys another really cool technique. This one's super useful. So let's say we have this Turbulent Displace applied to this mask layer. Alright, so you can see before, after. We have Turbulent Displace applied. And we want this Turbulent Displace to be stretched vertically. Well, how do we stretch Turbulent Displace? What we can do is add a transform effect, apply this transform effect before the Turbulent Displace, uncheck uniform scale, and we'll turn the scale height down to 50. And so you can see what's going on. Let's just go ahead and turn on the layer. So we have the Turbulent Displace, and then we scale it down 50%. So it messes up the shape of our mask. But what we can do is apply a transform effect after the Turbulent Displace, uncheck uniform scale, and turn up that scale height to 200. So that's going to fix how we've messed up the shape of our mask, but while doing so, it's going to stretch the Turbulent Displace. So we have a transform effect before and after the Turbulent Displace, which stretches our Turbulent Displace but not the mask, because only this transform effect applies to Turbulent Displace, but both transform effects are being applied to the mask. So that's why the mask is left intact. So that's how you can transform the geometry of effects. That is a super cool technique that I've used a lot over my years of editing. Move this to the side here. Complete control, yeah. Okay, wow, that's looking pretty awesome to me. So now to the fun part. We're gonna add color and glow to this fire. This is the satisfying part. Dopamine is just gonna flood into our brain. We're gonna be enjoying our existence so much. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna grab all the layers, and we're gonna pre-compose this, call this fire. And inside this fire composition, we want only the fire. So we're gonna find the text layer here, and we're just gonna fill this in with black. We'll grab a fill effect and just put it on the text here and change the color to black. Then we need to copy this text and put it in the parent composition. So hit Control C, come over here, hit Control V, and then let's delete the fill. So there we go. We have a composition with just the fire and then one with just the text. So let's go ahead and start adding those fun effects to the fire to make it look good. So the first thing we're going to do is get rid of any alpha information. We just want these to be luminance values on this fire layer. So we just need to fill in this transparency with a solid composite effect. Let's type in solid composite, apply this to the fire layer. Just fill that transparency in with black. Alright, so the second thing we're going to do is desaturate these flames because we're going to recolorize them. This is important because on flames, they're colorized in a certain way where the hue is defined by the lightness, right? The darker areas are more red and the brighter areas are more yellow. But the problem is when we mask out and fade this out, it gets darker, but then it doesn't change that red hue. It's just like a faded yellow-white. And we don't want that. See, this edge should be more red. So what we're going to do is desaturate this and recolorize it. So we'll have an accurate colorization. It'll be more consistent throughout the whole effect. And we'll just have more control over the color. So we'll apply curves. We're going to colorize this with the curves. So let's just lift up the red a little bit. Let's go to the blue, bring this down. That's going to leave some of the yellows in there. And maybe add a slight contrast with the green, not much. So a lot of our color is actually going to come from the glow and not the flames themselves. Speaking of a glow, let's go ahead and get to it. So we're going to type in here glow. Let's apply this after the curves. We're going to turn the glow operation to screen. Let's go to the glow colors, turn this to A and B colors. For the color looping, let's do sawtooth A is greater than B, and then we can add our custom colors here. So for color B, let's make it more of an orange, and for the color A, let's push it more towards the yellow, whitish, something like that. Now let's just affect the glow radius. Okay, so we've got a little glow going on here. Let's duplicate the glow and turn up the radius more on this one. So we're going to have several layers of glow. And this is how we get that lusciousness in the glow. And we'll probably just do one more copy of this glow and turn up the radius a lot more. Maybe like that. That's nice. So to preserve the detail, Actionvfx turned the exposure really down, so it captured all that detail, but really flames are a little bit brighter and more crushed. The whites are a little more crushed. So what I'm going to do is add levels, and I'm going to put this before the colorization, so before the curves, and we can just crush the whites in a little bit. I think the flames look a little bit more realistic this way. And just to kind of blend the highlights in a little better, what I want to do is add just one more glow, and we'll make the threshold 100% so it only gets those highlights. Just turn up the radius a little bit, and we can maybe turn this to screen, hoping that'll blend in the highlights a little bit better. And I think it does. So it's always fun to check out before and after, so we have a before and after. Wow, that's awesome just to see the final result of your work compared to the beginning. Wow, that is so luscious. Alright, so now let's composite this fire in with the text. So we'll do this with a screen blending mode, just like that. Okay, so now let me give you guys a quick overview of how we set up this scene, set up the environment, the reflection, and everything. I know you guys are interested in knowing that. So basically, we have the fire text layer here, and we make it a 3D layer so it responds to this camera. And what we did here is just basically duplicated that fire layer and flipped it vertically and positioned it right so it looks like a reflection. And you'll see here we have this nice texture to the floor. And how we did this was basically created a floor map, alright? So you can see we have this composition here. If we go into composition, you can see we have this 3D floor layer. But that 3D layer inside this composition actually responds to the camera in this parent composition because this collapse transformation button is enabled. So that's pretty cool. The 3D layer inside this composition responds to this camera. And that's a pretty cool software feature right there if you didn't know about that. So then we basically added a compound blur according to that floor map layer. Alright, so compound blur is a really cool effect. It adds different amounts of blurs in different areas according to a blur layer map. In this case, we're using the floor map. So that's a really cool technique for adding texture or diffusion to reflections. So then we just have this solid here to add some density to the floor. It's a 3D layer as well, so it responds to the camera. And also this gradient coming from above with some dust particles. And these dust particles were also actually from Actionvfx.com. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to create this pretty epic fire transition. We've already covered so much information, so many techniques in this tutorial, but we're already starting a whole nother effect. This is a pretty big tutorial, so let's go ahead and get started creating this effect before we waste more time. Like this, I know most of you guys say don't worry about the length of the tutorial, but I just don't want to make this too long. Alright, so we're going to start out by grabbing our stock footage. We're going to use this fire element here. This will be perfect for our transition. Let's go ahead and drag it into a new composition. I'm just going to rotate this, straighten it out a little bit, and move it down here. And let's go ahead and start making the transition. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new solid. We're going to call this map. And I'll actually just move it down a little bit. What we're going to do is grab the rectangular mask tool and draw this really horizontal rectangle here. We're going to turn this to subtract. We're going to add some feather, just like that. We're going to hit M, keyframe the mask path, put this all the way to the beginning, and let's just double click here, move this down. Let's go about 1 second in, move this all the way to the top like that. So we have this little animation here. And what I want to do is hit F9 for this first keyframe, add easy ease. So it starts out moving a little bit slower, then it begins to move faster, because that's kind of how the fire moves as it goes upward. It accelerates. So there we go, just like that. Now let's add some texture to this mask. So what we're going to do is apply Turbulent Displace to this matte layer. And we're going to turn the complexity up to something like 5 or 6. Let's turn the size down to about 50, something kind of like that. But now what I want to do is stretch this Turbulent Displace like we did before. So hopefully you guys remember how to do that. We're going to add a transform effect before the Turbulent Displace. Uncheck uniform scale, turn the height down to about 50. Then add another transform effect, uncheck uniform scale, and turn the height up to 200. So the mask is under both of these transform effects, so that it's not stretched. But the Turbulent Displace is only under the second transform effect, so the Turbulent Displace gets stretched. So that's cool. And what I'm going to do is just add one more Turbulent Displace after the transform effect so we can get some waviness. And change the random seed a little bit, and then I'll turn the size down to about 50. So we have a little bit of waviness to this texture. So let's turn it on, see how it looks. Alright, I like it. So now it's time to add that stretchy transform effect. We're going to do this with a CC scale wipe. So I'm going to add a new adjustment layer, type in CC scale wipe. This is a pretty cool effect. Apply that to the adjustment layer, and we're going to move the center point down here. We're going to turn up the stretch just like that. The direction of rotation, hold shift so it locks to that 0, angle there. And I'll move this all the way down to the bottom. Now we can change the stretch to make it go faster or slower. Let's go ahead and check out a preview, see how this looks. So I think we probably want more stretch, something like that. Alright, I like that. That's pretty cool. So one little detail or enhancement we want to add is a little bit of a flutter or glitchiness to this flamey transition effect. So we're going to do this by wiggling the stretch amount. So we'll do this with an expression. I hold alternate and click with stopwatch on the stretch parameter, and we'll just type in here wiggle. We're going to do parentheses, and we're going to do 15, so that's the frequency, and then we're going to do comma, maybe 4. So you can see this is going to give us some flicker, some flutter, add that glitchy feel. It's perfect for the transition, so let's see how it looks. Fluttery, I like it. So I actually wanted to have more flicker later on and less flicker earlier on, so what I can do is just, instead of having the amplitude as 4, I can make the amplitude time, and then do like maybe times 4. And so that way, as time increases, the amount of wiggle is going to increase. That flutter really makes the transition look nice. So what we want to do now is recolorize this flame so we don't have those faded whitish yellow colors. So we're going to do a solid composite tint curves. And there we go. So we want to pre-compose this all together. And just duplicate this a few times to cover the whole screen. So we're going to blend this in with a screen blending mode. Duplicate this again. Add some variation. Make the center one the last. There we go. We can add this slanted one here. Let's just stretch it vertically a little bit. Make sure it's on the screen blending mode. So there we go. That should look pretty nice. And we can add some glow to this whole transition here. So add glow. That looks pretty nice. Let's duplicate this. Add a more broad glow. There we go. So that pretty much wraps up this transition. I think it looks pretty awesome. Definitely covered some interesting software tricks and techniques. I definitely hope this inspires some other ideas as well. That's one of my biggest goals making these tutorials. It's not necessarily teaching you how to create this one specific effect, but using this effect to inspire other ideas. Wow, so I think this is quite an attractive, glowing, iconic, fiery tech scene. I love it. Hope you guys love it as well. And I have to say, I think my glowy, fiery cravings have been satisfied for today. Anyway, I hope you guys have had fun growing in your knowledge and skills. Hopefully your mind is just flowing with ideas at this point. I've definitely had fun. Remember to leave a like and subscribe so you won't lose access to this channel. My name is Lendon Bracewell for Actionvfx, and until next time, I'll leave you to it.